Hello YouTube, it's Redbeard and we are back again with another Total War video. Today we will explore Tzeentch units in Part 2, Chapter 2 of the possible Chaos units. This series is not afraid to explore the different universes and supplements of Warhammer that can make the biggest strategy game of all time into all it can be. This means we may explore the Monstrous Arcanum, End Times, Age of Sigmar, where appropriate, and others. In particular, most races should be very cautious when considering adding Age of Sigmar units, but I think Demons of Chaos should welcome the thought with open arms. Mods can introduce AOS units all they want, but I believe the vanilla game should primarily, or perhaps only, focus on AOS Chaos units. That being said, there are many units suggested from Fantasy that tie well with units we only see in the other settings I mentioned. Perhaps none better than the units I will talk primarily of today, the Tzaangors. For Tzeentch, the more obvious pick to come to the game is the Tzaangors, the marked Bestigors of Tzeentch. Now my hope is that we will perhaps in an upcoming content release, that includes some Beastman content, we could see marked Bestigors, Minotaurs, and all the Beastmen, Lords, and Heroes, excluding Bray Shamans with marks of Khorne. If we were to only get one Bestigor though, my guess and ultimate hope would be those of Tzeentch. Tzaangors in Age of Sigmar come in a variety of flavors, all with unique and quite frankly awesome models. All Tzaangors would be glass cannon melee fighters, at least compared to the units we're talking about today, with increased magic resistance, magic attacks, and debuffs to nearby enemies. Tzaangors are avian beastmen who serve Tzeentch, their natural instincts and animal savagery augmented with a keen, if cruel, intellect. They are often covered in savage totems and carry weapons of bone, iron, or crystal. Tzaangor origins are as multifarious as the plans of Tzeentch themselves. Some are corrupted or elevated, as they might say, by a Tzaangor Shaman. Others might be humans who have undergone horrific rituals. Others still are beast children, mutants born of human parents and left to die, but instead found and raised by Arcanite cults. Regardless of source, all recognize that they have been blessed by Tzeentch. Tzaangors are far more intelligent than other beastmen, and they look down upon their beastkin, seeing themselves as evolved and their cousins as little more than brute animals. The strangely mutated minds of Tzaangors have become particularly attuned to magic, and they are drawn to the arcane, seeking to hoard it. Tzaangors are also closely bound to the strands of fate, their animal instincts able to detect omens the way beasts sense prey upon the winds. Tzeentch did not transform his chosen beastmen to seek magic alone, he also created them to kill. Many rituals prepare Tzaangors for war, culminating in the weapon-taking Tzaangor, an unholy rite where the rent armor and broken weapons of foes are transformed into the resplendent gear worthy of fighters of Tzeentch. In battle, the Tzaangor war flocks are led by a Twistbraid champion, and they might with savage skill, stabbing and hacking with curved swords or axes, as well as rending with horn and beak. As magical creatures, they draw energy from the proximity of Tzeentchian sorcery and others of their own kind. The more groupings there are of 9 Tzaangors, the more savage they become. Tzaangors whose deeds have caught the eye of their patron are awarded with divine blessings. They are divided into 2 distinct groups, the Enlightened and the Skyfires, and are regarded by other Tzaangors as paragons of their bestial kind. Enlightened can carry spears wrought of change metal and possess the strange ability to perceive echoes of past events around them. In combat, many foes are driven mad as their darkest secrets are squawked out by the chattering Enlightened. Some Enlightened march to war amongst their lesser kin, inspiring them to greater acts of savagery, while others riding scintillating discs of Tzeentch. Skyfires, however, exclusively ride upon discs. It is their gift to see potential futures, but they can never speak of them. Skyfires are utterly silent, bar the twang of their bowstrings as they loose their arrows of fate. Both groups are led by Aviarchs, the strongest and most cunning of their number. Tzaangors can be found in every one of the mortal realms, where they live in the wild places, choosing locales rich in magic to raise their strongholds. There, Tzaangor Shamans tap into the magic to raise flux cairns, which become repositories of stolen arcane might. Flux cairns are surrounded by lesser herdstones, Glyph-inscribed monoliths, shaped in symbols sacred to Tzeentch. The longer a flux cairn remains in place, the more lands about it change. It is the Tzaangor's goal to use them to warp entire kingdoms, and eventually the realms themselves. For their war gear, each unit of Tzaangor fight with a variety of weapons. Some of the Tzaangors are armed with paired savage blades, whilst others carry a savage blade and an arcanite shield. 2 in every 5 models in the unit can be armed with double-hand savage great blades. No matter what they carry in their hands, all can also tear at the foe with their vicious beaks. Favored Tzaangors are sometimes honored with bearing their god's icon to war. These ornate totems can absorb the magical energies of nearby spellcasters and are used by the Tzaangors to steal the arcane force, which they use to grow their flux cairns. The Tzaangor Enlightened are the elite of the Tzaangor warflocks. They possess strange feathers and elaborate horns that denote that they are truly blessed with the favor of Tzeentch, with some even being favored enough to ride upon discs of Tzeentch. In contrast to the Tzaangor Skyfires, they cannot see the future, but instead are able to conceive echoes of past events. In combat, this allows them to parrot back all sorts of obscenities to the enemy to break them down psychologically. The dying words of loved ones, the sneering jeers of fellow soldiers, and the buried tales of betrayal. This same past vision allows the Enlightened to see their enemy's every move repeated, playing out each misplaced step and unbalanced weapon swing again and again. This gifts them more knowledge of their foe in a second than many a seasoned predator would know of their prey after weeks of stalking. And for their war gear, Tzaangor Enlightened wield ornate spears, setting them above their lesser kin. The Tzaangor Skyfires ride upon discs of Tzeentch solely. They are often seen as paragons of the warflocks, holding almost as much awe and reverence as the Tzaangor Shamans themselves. The fate sense of Skyfires compared to their kindred is greatly enhanced, allowing them at any given moment to perceive multiple potential futures. A Skyfire can never speak of what it sees, for they have been rendered silent by Tzeentch, but they are still able to use their knowledge to deadly effect. The Skyfire lines events up, as has been shown to them, and hits the target every time. For their war gear, Skyfires carry enormous bows wrought from the magical instruments of all sorts of shooting hails of arrows into the enemies from above. So for our first aspiring champion-esque unit for Tzeentch, we have the Tzaangor Enlightened. A halberd infantry, like many Tzeentch elite. It's armored, has flaming attacks, armor piercing, anti-large, charge defense against all, barrier, and a magical aura. With 16 entities, it would be probably a little squishier than most of the units here at 7,360, a bit less than the aspiring champions of Undivided. But it has 800 barrier, which matches a default generic Lord of Change. Armor 80, so a significant drop in armor. Speed at 38 to match most Bestigors, plus with the Primal Fury we'll get more than that. Melee attack 42 with melee defense 59 because it's a halberd infantry. Weapon strength around 100, armor piercing anti-large, not much of a charge bonus since it's halberd infantry. But then we get into its abilities where it really gets interesting. So based off its lore, we can assume that using its ornate totems ability. Now, it seems that it might be the Aviarchs, the so-called officers of the Enlightened band, that actually have this ability, but I think it would be a very awesome ability once you look at it. So it would have 3 uses with a cooldown of 60 seconds, range 175 meters with contact warp flame. So you could shoot somebody with this, apply warp flame, then go in and with your flaming attacks and melee do some extra damage. But here's the catch: you can only use it if you're out of melee, and it recharges only if a spellcaster, an enemy spellcaster, is on the field. So you wouldn't be able to use this ability unless there was a spellcaster on the field, and you wouldn't be able to recharge it unless there was an enemy spellcaster on the field that you were sapping the magic of, kind of like a glean magic in a way. Doesn't have to be in the aura, it just has to be in the battle. Then their unique ability, Echoes of the Past, basically an aura around them that, reduces their enemy's leadership and melee defense, as they, tell you your darkest secrets, they unfurl you before, and then, now you're open and they kill you. Would have Woodsman like any other Bestigor, but also expert charge defense and charge reflection. For our next variant, we have the Tzaangor Enlightened on discs. So, I compared Doom Knights and Bestigors with these guys. So, basically everything did the same guys as on foot, but now they fly, they get 105 speed, just like the Doom Knights. Maybe a little, again, they still have the 800 barrier, they'd get a bigger charge bonus of 49, still all the same abilities. Yeah, just be like a Doom Knights meets the regular Tzaangor Enlightened on foot. And for the last variant, we would have the Tzaangor Skyfire is my personal favorite. So they would lose the Ornate Totems ability for sure, but they would be basically like if you mixed Doom Knights, Sisters of Avalorn, and you shopped it with Great Bows into one unit. That's basically what these guys would be. So armor-piercing missiles with they're fire missiles as well, or magical and fire ammunition. Armor-piercing, obviously, also shield breaker, just like because they're going to be doing lots of damage. They're described as huge bows. They're wielded by Bestigors, basically the best of the Bestigors, Tzaangors. So again, I based that damage off of Ushapti Great Bows and Sisters of Avalorn, basically met in the middle with it. Yeah, would lose a lot of melee stats compared to the Enlightened and Doom Knights, much squishier than them with 60 armor, only 34 melee defense. They'd still be a decent melee combatant. That's where, the comparison of Sisters of Avalorn comes in. Their Bows of Fate goes along with the Fate Sense ability, unique ability they would have. So it'd just be passive constant. It would give them dodge. So like the Witch Elves, it helps them dodge melee blows and missiles. Gives them a better chance at dodging. But also, their missiles home in on targets, giving near perfect total accuracy. So the most accurate unit in the game is, I think, the Rattling Gun ROR, the Teeth Breakers. I think they're called, at 66. So these guys would have at least that or more, because their lore is all about they just never miss. Obviously, there's things in the game you could do to dodge or, go behind a hill or a tree or whatever. But yeah, these guys would have the best accuracy of anything in the game. That's what that ability mainly does. Again, they'd lose health too. Barrier would go down to 600. They're only at 6,400 health, so now they act more like the Doom Knights, a Doom Knight variant, than an Aspiring Champion variant now. Also fire whilst moving, Vanguard deployment, keep the Primal Fury, because all Beastmen have that. And yeah, there you go. All the amazing Tzaangors. I think the Tzaangor Enlightened would get +1 recruitment slot for every tier 5 building, and the ones on discs. And the foot version and Skyfires would get +2 every tier 5 building. And then obviously, again, we have all the marked Bestigor versions. There's additional hand weapons, sword and shield, great weapons, for the marked Bestigor versions, which would have 100 entities, but maybe I'll cover those guys more in a later video. Now, for all the variants that Tzaangors could come in as just marked Bestigors. They would be foot infantry with 100 entities like the Bestigor from the Beastmen roster. For the Enlightened, they would be about 16 units like the Aspiring Champions. And then the Skyfire variants would essentially be variants of the Doom Knights with 24 entities. Then a Lord in the Tzaangor Shaman, or perhaps a hero option. All would have magical attacks and be glass cannons in melee. The Tzaangor Foot Infantry variants would be faster than Chosen, if not quite as good in melee. Remember, glass cannon, they're variants of Bestigors. The dual weapon and great weapon variants would also bring new roles that the Chosen of Tzeentch don't currently. The Tzaangor Enlightened would act like a mix between the ROR Doom Knights and the Doomfire Warlocks of the Dark Elves roster, somewhere around there. Like the Doomfire Warlocks, they would be a glass cannon melee cavalry with magic attacks and possibly 2 bound spells. Only these bound spells would be from the lore of Tzeentch, maybe. Perhaps instead of Soul Blight and Lesser Doom Bolt, we could get 2 uses of Glean Magic or 2 uses of Lesser Blue Fires. Though I say lesser because the Blue Fire is working like Hawk Riders for the Sisters of Twilight, where every entity shoots 1 missile. That's how I see it. In addition, or perhaps instead, we could see the bombardment ability from the ROR Doom Knights on the Enlightened. Maybe only with 2 uses to keep the ROR unique. I just think it's a cool ability that deserves more screen time, so to speak. Their models carry ornate spears, giving them anti-large for a different role than Doom Knights as well. Now, if we only saw 1 variant of Tzaangors, I hope it to be the Skyfires, or the Enlightened. So Skyfires first, though. I mean, everything about them, lore, models, functionality, is just awesome. Tactically, they may become one of the best units in the game. 24 entities, each with roughly 40 missile strength, running the gamut from AP, flaming attacks, magical damage, all from a great vantage point. You know, the sky away from the petty squabbles of ground battle with some of, if not, the best accuracy in the game. On top of all this, they would still be decent glass cannon melee fighters. There would probably have to be less than 20 ammunition as to not be OP. For the last variant, we could have a Lord in the Tzaangor Shaman. This could be the Tzeentch marked Bray Shaman, the Twist Bray, or it could be a unique Lord for the Beastmen that is not only a caster of Tzeentch, but is a decent anti-large combatant. He would essentially take the Beastmaster role for Lords, being able to give unique buffs to all Tzeentch monsters and Tzaangor, Tzeentch-marked Beastmen, Tzaangors. Perhaps to represent their lore, they can summon Tzaangors or have a bound spell to mutate enemy infantry into Tzaangors. Kind of like my ideas for the Mutalith Vortex Beast or the Fireworm, the greater Chaos spawn of Tzeentch. So for Tzeentch's honorable mentions section, we have the Magisters and the Gaunt Summoners, which I believe were both Lord options for an Age of Sigmar. Now, we may never see Magisters and Gaunt Summoners become Lords because we already have Chaos Lords of Tzeentch. Demon Princes of Tzeentch, we have Lesser Demon and Greater Demon Lords of Tzeentch. So we may be done with Lords in general for the game. But if more were to come, we could possibly see the Magisters of the Gaunt Summoners. But if they weren't going to come as Lords or potentially heroes, they could come as heroes as well. We could see them as units. So and also, Tzaangors, though in lore, the Tzaangor Shaman can turn men into Tzaangors, so they don't have to be beastmen originally. It may be more of a direct transition to have somebody turn into a Magister from a Chosen of Tzeentch. So anyways, for some lore, Magisters are the leaders of the Tzeentch Arcanite cults. They are the spiders at the center of the metaphorical web, being some of the most powerful of Tzeentch's mortal servants. Each Magister is a powerful warlock in their own right, capable of giving a terrible and disturbing demise to anyone that annoys them. The largest of Arcanite cults will have several Magisters within. each possessing their own grandiose title and each constantly attempting to manipulate and undermine the other. To the god of deceit and treachery, such action is actively encouraged, as long as it does not interfere with his mercurial schemes. Tzeentch, as a god of change, is eager to gift an excess of arcane energy to his followers, as well as many a gift and mutation. Third eyes, avian features, extra limbs are most common, although stranger gifts are still given. Those who drink too deeply of these gifts, however, usually end as chaos spawn. So, quick side note, so that gives good credence. So, we've seen that the aspiring champions and uninvited connect. You can demote them basically back to chaos spawn. So, that might give Magisters a better spot as an aspiring champions type unit for Tzeentch. For mounts, these Magisters who conquer large enough swaths of land bind Screamers of Tzeentch into service, turning them into Discs of Tzeentch. In addition to their numerous mutations, Magisters wield a warp steel sword and a Tzeentchian rune staff. Now, the Gaunt summoners. Little is known of them, save that there can only be 9 at one time, and that they are all shrouded in cloaks of sorcerous illusion. They are powerful, faceless demon sorcerers from the Crystal Labyrinth of Tzeentch, who have served Archaon ever since the Everchosen enslaved them during the Age of Chaos. After enslaving of Gaunt summoners, Archaon, being angry at their unwillingness to serve him, took one of the senses of each of them. They are able to twist reality with their incantations or engulf whole armies in warp fire, known to be responsible for some of the most horrifying atrocities of the Age of Chaos. The Gaunt summoners are the masters of the Silver Towers, ever-changing arcane fortresses that link the realms of chaos to the mortal realms. They can be armed with charged staves, a warp-tongue blade, and a book of profane secrets, and can ride a Disc of Tzeentch, granting the rider the ability to fly, or accompanied by a quartet of chaos familiars that provide a myriad of benefits and take damage for him. They can cast a Fractal Mindstorm, which turns the enemy mental strength against itself, or Infernal Flames that engulfs an area in scorching flames. So I made the stat cards, just like I did for all the other units. For the Magisters and the Summoners, so we can talk about how exactly they'd act. The Magisters are kind of like what the Tzaangor Enlightened would be on foot, but definitely more glass cannon. They'd be basically missile infantry. They had flaming attacks, good range, decent melee combatant, warp flame barrier, fire whilst moving, and a spellcaster. I think I compared them against Sisters of Avalorn and Ice Guard a little bit, whilst also comparing them against aspiring champions. Again, these videos took weeks to make, so I didn't write literally everything down. But they'd have strong barrier at 800, which would match the Lords of Change, which I think makes sense for what they are, but their health would be low, 5,880, 13 entities. Armor, big, again, all their stats, glass cannon, which you can look and see. 9 is the sacred number of Tzeentch, so I tried to add some 9s in there where they made sense. Basically, this would be one of the weaker aspiring champions in melee, but again, it'd be a strong spellcaster. It would have fire attacks, magical attacks, warp flame attacks, both in melee and in range. Basically kind of a sniper unit with like 200 range, 139 shots. Oh, I also compared them against Loud Belchers. That's what I compared them against. For their abilities, they'd have Encourage, Hide in the Forest, Fire whilst moving, Arcane Mirth, which is the pink horror ability where if they're out of combat, they help regenerate Winds of Magic or recharge or whatever. Conduit of Affinity is the ability on the ROR. Pink Horrors that replenishes ammo. I think that would be good on an aspiring champion type unit. we could also possibly just see that Conduit of Affinity ability come on to some type of hero or lord, which I think would be extremely useful. Bound abilities, so this is where the spellcaster comes in. Would have 2 bound Glean Magics and 2 bound Blue Fires of Tzeentch. Now, the Blue Fires of Tzeentch, again, how I said it with the Tzaangors, all, one shot from each and one fireball from each entity, and it's a lesser form, but would be more powerful altogether than the regular spell. And for the Gaunt Summoners, so this unit, so in lore there's only 9, right? There can only ever be 9. So I think this unit should act kind of like the Queen Bess for the Vampire Ghost, where you have to complete, that Tzeentch doesn't have rights like the Warhammer 2 races do. The Warhammer 3 races don't have rights. Like, they don't have their rights, man. But I think it would act like that, and that you could only recruit 1 ever. And it would have 9 entities in the unit, monstrous missile infantry. They'd have flaming attacks, good range, decent melee combatant, warp flame, barrier, fire whilst moving, spellcaster, causes terror. They'd have high barrier, so like 900, 1,000. They should rival that. They should be, rivaling that of like Kairos Fate Weaver, because there's only 9 of these guys. They're very powerful. All the Magisters like bow down and do all their work, do their bidding. So I still have them as kind of a glass cannon unit. That would be their one big downside. 6,400 health, but again, high barrier, middling armor. So they would be riding Discs of Tzeentch, so they'd have 105 speed. Again, just like the Magisters, in melee and at range, they're going to be doing flaming attacks, magical attacks, warp flame attacks. Again, comparing them against like Lead Belchers, we have around 200 range, 199 damage per shot. 22 ammo on either the Magisters or Gaunt Summoners may be too much. That might be really, really powerful, so they might want to tone down the ammo a little bit. But abilities, Causes Fear, Hide in the Forest, Fire Whilst Moving, Arcane Mirth and Conduit of Affinity, which we already talked about. Siege Attacker, Flying, this is where new stuff comes in. It would get the Fire of Change passive, and then the Searing Torrent ability from the ROR Doom Knights. I just think that's a cool ability. I'd like it to see it done against somewhere else, and in a unit like the Gaunt Summoners, and how I envision it, where you can only ever have 1 and it's just a super powerful unit. I think being able to reuse that ability here would make a lot of sense. Bound abilities, bound spells basically. Blue Fires of Tzeentch, the two uses of everything, but it would have 3 spells, and like the Magisters only had 2, these guys would have 3. Most spellcaster units usually have 2 spells, but these guys, again, they're like a super unit in the kind of way of Knights of Torgal, but more like Queen Bess is how I'm kind of imagining its implementation. But yeah, anyways, Blue Fires of Tzeentch, Treachery of Tzeentch, and Tzeentch's Firestorm. And Treachery of Tzeentch and Tzeentch's Firestorm make sense a lot with how their lore reads out. Just, being able to douse entire armies in flame, and also get into their mind and break them down. Now, and then one more thing they'd have is the unique ability Familiars, which basically I just envision it like the Necrofex Colossus. It's a abandoned ship ability, where when it only happens once per battle, but when the Necrofex Colossus is in melee, I think when it's like below 50% health, a zombie deckhand pirates is summoned. But for the Gaunt Summoners, it would be Chaos Furies of Tzeentch, and it would just happen once as soon as they are engaged in melee. So basically, it would be a nice way for them to be able to get away. Something like a dragon or, Hawk Riders or Manticore or something attacks them in the sky where they're vulnerable or whatever, and they don't have time to, go to the ground. Then it summons a unit of Chaos Furies of Tzeentch, dips out, shoots them from afar, yada yada yada. It's all good. Yeah, so this would be an extremely powerful unit. So again, the implementation is in the frame of you would only ever be able to field one. Now, for one last honorable mention that I did not make a stat card for is the Kairic Acolytes. Now, I kind of thought they would use the Kairic Acolyte models for the Marauders of Tzeentch, because that's basically what they act like, and it's a really good model, so why not use it? They, after watching Village's Let's Play, they obviously did not, which I'm kind of curious why they wouldn't, but, you know, the Marauders just look like... Again, I mean, you know, it's more important that the Chaos Warriors and the Chosen get those fancy reskins for each god, right? But I just thought the Marauders would get the Kairic Acolytes, but I guess I was wrong. Maybe they could re-envision the Kairic Acolytes as an aspiring champion unit. Doesn't really make sense to me, but maybe. Maybe we'll see modders change the Marauders of Tzeentch into the Kairic Acolyte skin. I think that would be nice. So yeah, I kind of wish I had thought about this in my last video with the Nurgle, but giving a visual aid to the Warband upgrades and how they might change with some of these new units. So if you look at the Undivided Warband upgrades, you know, you have that tier 4 area, which has the Gore Beast Chariot and the Aspiring Champions in it, right? Then you look at Nurgle and Azazel, and that entire section is empty. Suspicious? I think so. So, that, and you know, that just gives credence to this whole series of videos I'm making. So here we're looking at the Nurgle Warband, and I've added in the units I was talking about. So, right above the Nurgle Chosen and the Nurgle Chaos Spawn, we see 3 different variants for the Putrid Blight Kings that I covered in my last video for Nurgle. You can upgrade from Chosen, obviously, drew a little arrow there to get to the Putrid Blight Kings, and then you could devolve the Putrid Blight Kings over to Chaos Spawn. And then I also talked about the Rot Knights, which are upgrades from Chaos Knights of Nurgle. So there you got the Chaos Knights of Nurgle, arrow goes up, and then you got Rot Knights. Now again, I only made one variant in my last video for Rot Knights, but there could possibly be 2 variants, Lance and Shield, and then Hand Weapon and Shield. Then, so Tzeentch, unfortunately, in the Village Let's Play, they didn't ever show Tzeentch's Warband upgrades tree, which is unfortunate. That would have made this graphic a little better, but maybe in another video, if it's appropriate in that video, maybe in a weekly roundup, I'll redo the Tzeentch one so it looks the graphics looks a little better. But I just used the Undivided for now to be different than either the Slaanesh or the Nurgle one. Hopefully they'll show the Khorne one and Valkyria's. I'll be able to use that. But so here, you know, up from the Chosen, we see. So I'm gonna left to right. The units you see added at the top are the Tzaangor Enlightened on foot, the Magisters on foot. Then you got the Blue Arrow upgrade over to Tzaangor Enlightened, and then to the right of that, upgrades from the Chaos Knights would be obviously Doom Knights, and then possibly the Tzaangor Skyfires right there. And both of those could maybe be upgraded to the Tzaangor Enlightened. Maybe. It's not really how it works lorefully, but, you know. Tzeentch is a little harder to do in all these videos because they don't have like a direct aspiring champion unit like the other ones clearly do. One last little honorable mention here is the Ogroid Thaumaturge. This guy standing in the middle of the pile choking this dude out in this image. That is not a Tzaangor, that is an Ogroid Thaumaturge. So there's an Ogroid Thaumaturge, and then there's an Ogroid Myrmidon in the Warcry supplement for Age of Sigmar. I absolutely love their units. I think they could be used possibly as hero options for Chaos. So like the Ogroid Myrmidon could maybe be a hero option for the Warriors of Chaos at some point, or just Undivided in general, and the Ogroid Thaumaturge could be a hero option for Tzeentch, maybe to be more fantasy friendly. It could become the Chaos Ogre Thaumaturge or the Chaos Ogre Myrmidons instead of Ogroids, which I think are technically different. You just change them to Chaos Ogres. Now, to end this video, I just want to remind you guys to stay tuned for the other chapters of the series over the next few days in my weekly roundup video as well. Also, I want to know what you guys think. Do you think Magisters or the Champion Tzaangors would fit better as the Aspiring Champions type unit in the Tzeentch roster and for the Warband upgrade trees? Do you think I pretty much hit the nail on the head with the stats? If not, how would you change them? If there are units I didn't mention that you'd like me to cover, what are they? Often, when I say we could see these units, keep in mind I'm not just trying to talk to CA, Games Workshop, and the community, but also modders too. But the whole point of these videos is try to get engaged with everyone in the Total War Warhammer community to see these things come to life and figure out what is the best way they could be implemented. Let me know in the comments below. Help a brother out and like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification so we can kick that algorithm into gear and get the community talking about this stuff. I hope you all have an absolutely splendid day. Farewell.